The books and stories by Maxwell Conroe about the purpose of life make us pause and think. Let me recount a brilliant short story by Maxwell Conroe. It's titled Haunted by Apparitions and Looming Insanity, and here is how it goes. You may have heard about curious encounters with people long deceased from times past. At first, I could not believe this was possible. Then fate bestowed upon me an ever-increasing number of apparitions in an unstoppable way. After years of deep fear and unsettlement, I now cherish these wonderful experiences when they occur. However, there is one exceptional encounter that I wished had never taken place. Act 1. Albert appears. Albert just happened to be there in my living room. This was my first week in a spectacular penthouse that overlooks the Mediterranean Sea from a building perched on a steep slope above the Andalusian village of Carboneras. I had looked forward to my reclusive week with room for relaxation, dining, and physical exercise. Albert was not part of this plan. Albert was not a parrot that had flown in from the vast terrace. No, this was the Albert, Mr. Einstein. He looked exactly like you'd expect him to look like. Well, just himself. Silver gray curly hair, friendly piercing eyes, his whole being radiating teddy bear-like ability. He hung back on the fauteuil in my living room and had one leg nonchalantly dangling over the armrest. He had a gentle, playful smile, but still said nothing. All the while I watched him and was groping for clues about his presence here in my den. I was at a loss for both clues and words. Mr. Einstein kind of seemed to notice my confused state and scraped his throat as if to announce he was going to say something. He actually did say something, but it was a puzzling statement. "Of course you know why I am here." His words were spoken with great gravity, but left open their interpretation. If Einstein was sent as an archangel of God, I shall conclude that my last minute had arrived. "Come with me and I bring you to heaven," I imagined, was the next thing Einstein would say to me, but something about his intonation was foreboding more inquiry rather than a final judgment. "I have no idea what you mean. Of course I recognized you right away, but I do not think we have ever met before. That being the case, how on earth would I know why you are here? But please be comfortable and feel welcome in my den. My name is Maxwell. How can I help you and what is your cause, sir?" "Please call me Albert. I apologize just happening to be here when you may have least expected to meet someone of my generation, but when I said, 'I think you know why I am here,' I really assumed you would rationally conclude, understand the way I ended up here. You know very well that there is only one person who could broker for you meetings with ancient mortals like me." He paused and smiled at me in a rather disarming way. "You see, that book project of yours should not be laid idle. After all that has been done to help you in the right direction, Cleopatra, for it is she who sent me here, thinks that you should not let up, and she urges you to not further delay finishing your modern testimony." In fact, I had already realized that Einstein was here for this very reason. Almost 5 years ago, I had conducted my artist-in-residence project in the Grand Canyon National Park. A cabin had been placed along one of the trails to conduct interviews with hikers about existential questions such as, "Where are you going?" and "Why are you here?" Almost immediately, my project became surreal. 2 visitors to my cabin, elderly men, claimed to be Jesus and Mohammed. They were quibbling over whose scripture had the largest circulation and who had the most genuine followers. Although they called each other a fake, they seemed to get along rather well. At first sight, I thought they were actors, but gradually, I was no longer so sure. Not before long, a third visitor appeared, a woman claiming to be Cleopatra. She summoned Jesus and Mohammed to stop arguing and reminded them of their plight, which was to fight off evil, and that much was left to be done. The 3 of them had cajoled me into helping them to gain control over the World Wide Web, which they saw as a threat to their divine sovereignty. After quite some adventure, I was pressed into writing a modern testimony. After several years of mental struggles, I had never managed to bring myself to complete the new testimony project, let alone even get started. It was simply too daunting a task, and I was haunted by a profound fear of failure. Cleopatra, during my stay at the cabin in the canyon, and during later encounters that were all aimed at coaxing me in the right direction, had provided quite a bit of support. I enjoyed her patronage, but I never quite fulfilled her expectations. 2 years after the first apparition, as I kept calling my encounters with deceased mortals, or post-mortals if you wish, my hallucinations ceased. And now Cleopatra was back at it again, treating me to an apparition of no one less than Albert Einstein to remind me about the overdue testimony. I resumed my conversation with Albert's apparition. Yes, I know why you are here, Albert, but I cannot fulfill my divine mission. I am not a prophet. What's more, I am an atheist. You should understand my position. I am a mere mortal, unfairly targeted to spread a gospel that I cannot feign to understand. Maxwell, I know all these things, and this is exactly why I am here. Let me explain. You see, while Albert was speaking, I am not sure what came over me. I stood up from my seat and left the room. "Ah, you cannot do this," exclaimed Einstein. I went into the kitchen and looked for something to eat. That was my compulsive eating disorder in full motion. When I get stressed out, I have to eat something. A voice in my head, distinctly Edgar's voice, another character I had met years ago, also in the canyon, who was portrayed by Jesus and Muhammad as the source of all evil. Yes, the devil himself. The voice in my head kept saying, "Kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill, kill, kill him." When I woke up the next day, I found myself ice cold, lying on the marble floor. There was a puddle of dark red fluid, blood, next to my face. This was not my blood. A kitchen knife lay in the middle of the puddle. When I looked up, there still was Albert's leg, casually placed over the chair's arm. Albert was alive. He opened his friendly eyes and gazed at me for what seemed like an eternity. He then spoke softly. "I know this is not your fault. Please bring me to the sea. It will be the best way to solve this matter without fuzz." Herr Einstein, to me, seemed mortally wounded, ashen white, for his blood was on the floor and no longer fed his powerful mind. "Let me take you to the sea, then." I helped him to his feet and, jointly, we strolled down the alley next to the base building of my penthouse. It was only 300 meters to the sand beach, but our journey seemed to take an eternity. At last we arrived at the shore of the Mediterranean Sea. "God bless you, my son," spoke Einstein and said no more. He waded straight into the sea and continued to stride forward into deeper and deeper water until he vanished below the waterline. Act 2. My Shrink. I sat in front of Elena, a middle-aged woman with a friendly face and piercing hazel-colored eyes. She was seated behind a huge wooden desk that smelled of teak wax. Her numerous professional certificates adorned the walls around us. "How can I help you?" she opened. "Do not fear to share what troubles you. Everything said in this room stays confidential. It is part of my professional pledge." I thought over the implications of sharing my tormented soul and decided it was time to fight off my Einstein demon. I outlined to Dr. Elena the various versions of my dreams, self-censoring to leave out the goriest details. For several months, I had suffered from recurrent nightmares. These dreams were really haunting me in their various versions. Nearly all of them had a frightening scene in which I seemed to be somehow responsible for Einstein's death. The dreams were always vivid and real lifelike, not one of those dreams you know right away is just a dream and nothing more. I have, of course, checked how Dr. Einstein actually died. He was 76 and died in 1955 from complications related to an abdominal aortic aneurysm that he had been operated for several years earlier, in 1948. With an experimental fix. So, what could explain my subconscious obsession with Einstein in such a morbid fashion? Self-help online resources quickly brought up nightmares as a symptom of excessive emotional stress, intrusive thoughts, or post-traumatic stress disorder. The inexplicable violence of my recurrent dream gave me a lot of anxiety. The anxiety grew and grew, such that I started to dread falling asleep, out of fear to relive my unhealthy encounter with Einstein's phantom. It became really difficult to function normally, even professionally. So I decided to confide my problematic nightmares to a close friend. "You have a problem," he said in sobering way. "Ever considered seeing a shrink?" Indeed, I had already considered the option several times. In fact, I've had very positive experiences and excellent results with psychotherapy, which salvaged me from madness when encountering psychological challenges. But this one issue I had hoped would fade away by itself did not fade. It didn't. The nightmares so persisted that at a certain point my whole life was overtaken by preoccupation with my recurrent Albtraum. "I think you're right," I said to my friend. "I will go visit a psychotherapist." As usually happens in such matters, I postponed the visit for another couple of weeks, but insomnia took its toll on me. My moods grew darker and darker. The nightmares kept recurring and tended to grow more violent as time passed. So, here I was in the office of Dr. Elena, my psychotherapist. "I see," she said. "This is a most interesting case. I am glad you came to see me. You may need some help to begin to understand the underlying causes of your obsession with this long-deceased scientist." She paused and looked quietly, but very focused, into my eyes. Fathoming my emotional state, I figured. I was naturally introvert on such intermental issues and did not quite know how to respond, so I just looked at my hands in my lap. "Mr. Maxwell," continued Dr. Elena, "can you please tell me what could possibly explain your interest in Dr. Albert Einstein?" I searched my mind carefully and realized this honest question should be given an earnest answer. He was a genius, obviously, and greatly revered and recognized, even during his lifetime, I said. Perhaps I am frustrated about never being able to achieve such a great recognition for all my sacrifices. Dr. Elena looked intently at me. She murmured. "How would you summarize your sacrifices?" I reflected briefly on her question, and then realized there was really another reason for my anxiety. "I am sorry," I said. "My sacrifices are not what is really bothering me. I always loved my research and teaching, taking some slowly thinking students in stride. But I have been denied tenure only a couple of months ago. I'm still in a state of denial and appealing to overturn the unfounded decision because the facts and the arguments given by the committee do not add up for me." Dr. Elena looked at me in a worrisome way. "Thank you for sharing these details with me," she said, then paused for what seemed a very long time. "I think you must be exhausted from all these sleepless nights. I want to prescribe you some antidepressants and sleeping pills. Once you have rested up a bit, say in a couple of weeks, I would like to see you back and start your therapy." The word therapy sank in with an unsuspected impact. I was now an official patient with a serious condition that needed a cure. Apparently, my condition was judged pretty serious because the therapy sessions were postponed until I had calmed down, for which I was given heavy prescription medication. The gravity of my predicament was only now sinking in. Then Dr. Elena reminded me in the most stereotypic way, "Your today's time is up." Act 3. Unraveling. When I drove home, I sank into deep thoughts. By killing Einstein in my dreams, I was turning against a dead scientist, while my real tormentors were my own colleagues who had savagely mishandled my case by misrepresenting my achievements. Should I not kill them instead, rather than turning on an innocent, long-deceased old man? The shock of me thinking about going on a rampage, killing my own colleagues, woke me out of my deep thoughts. The traffic was getting busier, too. I made it safely to the pharmacy and picked up my prescription pills. I think I must have slept around the clock for maybe a whole week when a letter arrived. This letter was signed by the president of my university. "Dr. Conroe, I am herewith informing you." I could not believe what I was reading. I was denied an appeal because I had missed the statutory deadline for filing an appeal. The dismissal from my professorship was now a fact and irreversible. My head was throbbing. Pills! I needed pills to calm down. The whole week I had slept. I could not recall a single moment that my nightmares about killing Albert Einstein had returned. But if I could no longer contend myself with the virtual killing of a person long dead, how could I contain my frustration? I was scared about what the future would hold for me. Would I go on a rampage? It was high time to call Dr. Elena's office and try if I could schedule my follow-up meeting sooner than planned. In fact, this story is real. This is not fiction, but part of a well-documented case of academic mobbing with Kafkaesque dimensions. Many former colleagues have pleaded I should not release that detailed account, but I am quite sure it will be published soon, so you will understand why my killing of Einstein's avatar was only a natural reaction, a human coping mechanism, when there is no other way, to channel frustration about deep injustice out of our system.